I was looking for a way to still have sort of this bulletin board, and Padlet seemed to be a good way to go. And you have a little more control over it because I love Jamboard. I love many other platforms as well. But in Padlet, you can pre-approve. And we have a high poverty school out here in Castroville. And we, once in a while have some challenging students, to say the least. And at any rate, with Padlet, I was able to have just a little bit more control. And recently, I mean, we read, I have to say, last semester, one of the high points was teaching Stamped. And if you haven't had a chance to see Jason Reynolds, I want to put in a plug for Stamped as well with Jason Reynolds. Now, one of the things I'm always after, is, as most of us are, is to really enhance those close reading skills. And all of us pretty well know that the more reading that our students do, it does enhance writing. And so I was like trying to figure out how to further, enhance it, to lack of a better word just now. But here we are identifying writer's craft moves and wanting to practice and get the kids to simulate craft moves that they're seeing in professional writers, and then engage students by having them generate success criteria. And it's very much like having a rubric and saying, hey, here's the rubric, now put it in kid speak, or in kid language, or student language, I should say. And that's what I was after. Now, just by coincidence, it was kind of neat that Cannery Row had its 75th birthday over here in Monterey County, California. Just a beautiful place, just an amazing place. But Cannery Row Days link here are, if you're interested and want to see more of my students, used these pieces from It's Our Local Library to further enhance background knowledge. But once again, back to looking at some of Steinbeck's work. House on Mango Street, I've used this with as well. And to get students past that just kind of telling writing to a showing writing, where they're really showing the detail. And what we know, one of the things that Steinbeck is known for is that rich sensory detail, where he just paints a picture with his words. So another thing that was really pretty cool is students kind of feel connected to Cannery Row. It's just maybe 30 miles from here, and they enjoy the humor. So I wanted something a little bit lighter than starting out with something so intense as some other novels, because of our whole situation with the pandemic. And they enjoy the stories that are loosely based on people who once lived in Cannery Row. And some of them had never heard of Doc Ricketts, and that was okay. And let's see if I hit spacebar. That doesn't always work. I had gotten so used to spacebar. So, now Google does a little bit different thing. Now, what I'd like to have everyone do just now, take maybe 5 minutes. You're going to need possibly a piece of paper. If you want to do it digital, you can. Whenever possible, I have kids do pen to paper to just have that cognitive connection. But whatever it is that you would like to use, let's have you do a quick write and think about a place with which you're very familiar. It could be a city block, a corner grocery store, a coffee shop, rooftop of an apartment building, maybe an open market, concert, sports arena, field, our field, maybe a bowling alley, but you get the idea. Someplace that's important to you. And if you'll take just 5 minutes and do a quick write, just let it flow. pausing here. Now, with some of what I've been doing is going to as many of the Penny Kittle, Kelly Gallagher workshops that I can get to, and a quick pause is just fine. And we're going to return to this piece. And if you would feel comfortable, if there's something that you can share in the chat, either a line or a thought that you've had in from your writing today. For me, it's been all about heading for the forest, heading for the redwoods during this pandemic. All right. Okay. So in the chat, if you'll share something that you were able to write about. All right, so what do we have here? Okay. And I know we're a little pressed for time, but generally in a classroom, I'll read all of these. I have close to 80 minutes. I usually keep my kids for at least 35, 40 minutes. And then they have asynchronous time. But here we have an alley, a barking dog. Here's people arguing, laughing, sensory description, this local park where it's wooded. I wrote about walking to Bates Creek as a child. Here we have houseboats. Oh my gosh, so rich in sensory detail. And then talking about writing as being very, very therapeutic. My heart goes out to you and your loss. And beautiful, beautiful pieces. And keep them coming. People will be reading those. I will read everything. And I tell my students that I will read everything that they put in the chat. So let's, for the sake of time, let's move to our next slide. And here we go. All right. So our next piece that we're going to have, and I have 10th graders just now, and I also was very moved by Lucy Calkins and the whole piece about craft moves and looking at craft. And I know that, you know, I've given kids lists and lists, like I said, memorize these literary terms, but it's like, until I just keep seeing them over and over, that it doesn't really absorb. And so if you're feeling like, oh, it's early morning, well, actually in California, it's now 8:30, but if you're feeling a little like worried that you're not going to get it right, or, you know, just know that I ask students, whatever it is they see in the writing, to try to put words to what they think that writer's doing. There's no right or wrong answer. And then some of what I've already done with students is front loaded. So I've front loaded things like sensory detail, figurative language, character, description of place, sentence variety. We've been front loading. So right now we're just kind of getting a snapshot of where we're headed here. And when you get into Padlet just now, once again, I found that I just had a little more control with Padlet because I have teenagers from special ed to gifted. I have full range. I have kids that have been in, juvenile hall. I have just full range. So at any rate, just felt like I had a little more control with Padlet because you can pre-authorize their comments. Okay, so you'll see some of the emojis. Like if a like I've only had a couple of kids use profanity because I've told them that I'll be watching. But anyway, pausing now. We're going to be going to breakout rooms just now. And you're going to have access to Padlet, and I'll pop the Padlet link into the chat. And what I want you to do is with your groups, it's going to be random groups. First of all, introduce yourselves, say a little bit about where you're from, and then start going through those passages and doing your best to identify some of the craft moves that you see the author doing. And in this case, it's Canrio Steinbeck. So it's going to look like this. And let me pop this into, it's loading a little bit slow over here. It's kind of waking up. And let's get this in a chat for you so you don't have to fish for it. Here we are. Okay, and here we are. I'm about to whisk you away, to borrow from Troy. I'm about to whisk you away into some breakout rooms and enjoy discussing craft moves. I'll give you, about 7-8 minutes. Oh, by the way, I didn't model this, but just click here, start typing. Remember, it goes back and forth. You just start clicking and adding your thoughts. All right. And you don't have to do quite all of them, and I'll be in there adding some things as well. So was everybody able to access Padlet? And let's get to our breakout rooms. And we're still just in shock with how much sensory description, and we're just loving the things that you guys came up with. And if our students could even do half of this, we'd be so happy. And while my students are adding, I'm adding too. Janet and I worked a lot on number 4, passage 4. So look at all these. Alliteration. Okay, now let's move to the next thing. Now with the next thing, I've got to pull up my slides. I'm hoping this is where these kinds of things are just all over my walls in my classroom. So my goal was how can I still do that in my classroom? And here, let's go to the slides. Here we go. So now that we've done that piece, the next thing I have students do, let's see if I can go one more. And now I want to work on success criteria. This piece, even though it sounds, just think rubric. But what I like about this piece is that students add to it. So I'm going to go ahead and link this, and I'm going to put it into the chat. And would you think you're going to fill the center with the things that we are noticing, the success criteria. When these are generated by students, they own it more. And so for a sample, putting it in an I can statement, I can use sensory detail to help paint a picture in a reader's mind. And right now, everyone can just start adding to it. So if you open it up, let's take maybe 4 or 5 minutes and start adding to it. Okay. And this becomes really powerful for kids. And then they start naming it. Like previous years when I wouldn't necessarily go over this as well, where I just have them memorize a list of figurative language terms, when I had them actually start writing about it, what it is, what are they noticing. And I know people are still kind of getting, oh, look at this juxtaposition. So we've got so many great things here. Sentence length, metaphor, literary devices, verb tenses. Someone had mentioned active verbs, strong words to create focus, intentional run-ons, all of these things. Here we go. All right. Create those using words to create feeling. All right, let's pause because I know that we're going to be running out of time soon. I'm going to go back to the slideshow and also let's look at our next piece. Once you have that criteria and it's generated by students, you can focus on a few, you can focus on more, you can have the kid or the students choose. And if we have enough time, there's something I like to do, and I learned about this through the C3WP. It's the Community Writers Program. Once kids have done a rough draft, rarely do they go back to it. And so with loop writing, return, if everyone would just take a few minutes, return to that quick write we wrote. Select a line that you have written today, just one sentence, and then go ahead and make a flash draft, writing as much as you can using show not tell. Okay, and some of the success criteria that we saw, whether it's alliteration, sensory detail, in a flash draft. Okay, using craft moves from that anchor chart. So pause, choose a line from your right, and start a whole new quick write. Pausing here, 3 minutes. I maybe I'll go back just quick. And with that success criteria, once again, this is from Fisher, Fry, Hattie, and having the students then look at their writing, look at what they were able to do. And I'm looking at the clock. I'm going to end in about 4 minutes because it's a bit of a rush, and then have you guys share some more. Look at how can I strengthen my writing, and then what are some of the strong aspects of my work, and just that whole process really, I want to say, in a sense, gives students ownership of their own work, and the ultimate goal is to help them be leaders of their own learning. And something even as simple as, what did you do well? Where did I have trouble? What goals do I have for my next essay? Just really help students in setting those goals. And it gives me sort of a place to encourage and strengthen some of the writing goals that they come up with. All right, so let's go to that next slide. And I want, I'm curious what you were able to do with your flash drafts. So if we could, if we had more time, I'd have us all back in a breakout room, and I use breakout rooms a lot. I leverage the chat a lot to get that interaction. And for a while, my kids kind of sat quiet. And then I ended up giving each frame, like the upper right frame had a task, the frame 2 had a task, frame 3 had a task, frame 4, and we're out of time for that. But I saw that over time, we're mostly distance learning just now. Kids began to interact much more. All right, so let's pause here, and could you add anything in the chat about your original versus your loop writing? And I will add some things in the chat about my loop writing, some things that I found. And the first time I did loop writing, I didn't think my writing would take off a little more, and it just depends. But even today, I started writing about how just that idea of a walk in the woods, how they're even saying now that all of us need to be out and about and getting into wide open spaces, especially if we've sat in front of a screen. All right, so anything you can add in the chat about your second round? Were you able to see something pop up that maybe you hadn't thought you'd write about today? And once again, with loop writing, it's this whole idea of writing for discovery and looking at that professional model and being able to expand our own writing. All right, so add things to the chat from your second piece, and then we'll close in just a couple minutes. Oh, look at this. The waves sparkle and dance off the afternoon light. Love that. Love that. I'm going to go over here, look for some of mine. Entering the coffee shop where my daughter works, the rich aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and the warm tones of the room simultaneously awaken and calm my senses. My calm is immediately jolted by our dog Mabel giving a hard tug on the leash because she is eager to bound over to my daughter to get a treat and greet the other customers. And then I wrote a peaceful place with no worry, M dash, because I saw an M dash in there, fresh, pure air. I like how Steinbeck's writing as a mentor text inspired us to add a lot of lightness of being, a bit of humor, as well as more descriptive details and sensory language. Absolutely, absolutely. And as you must know, we are out of time. I'm going to go to our last slide. And having students self-assess their writing and build their own writing goals, and they need the language to do it, even if it's their perception of what the craft is, and that's powerful. Okay, last slide, let's go. And here we are. And this is right out of our Fisher, Fry, and Hattie friends. Make sure if you're really into Fisher Fry Hattie, I've got a great video for you in the resources. And I've got their playbook, some other resources as well. But success criteria, where students use craft moves generated from the class anchor charts, in this case Padlet, to use as success criteria in self-assessment. Remember, having them be leaders of their own learning is so powerful. And glows, they are able to identify what their current skills are. They can see what they're doing well. But with that mentor text or that professional model, they can see a place to get to. And where it grows, where they can grow, they set their own goals. for their next writing assignments. And I want to stop here and I thank you for joining today's session. Once again, this is something I've been thinking a lot about, and I wanted you to kind of have some hands-on process of what I have students do. And the piece that we're missing today is more community sharing of writing. And once that starts taking off, it's like wildfire. Kids love to share. Alrighty, hey folks, have an awesome day today. And I plan to go back and watch everybody else's recordings when they're all done. All right. Let me know if you have any questions or anything. My email is there available, jangdspd@gmail. And take good care, everybody. I hope you have an amazing year despite all the issues.